The morning started like any other Tuesday on Earth until every communication satellite, radio station, and television network across the planet received the same message simultaneously. Dr. Sarah Chen was drinking her coffee at the SETI facility in California when the transmission began playing on every screen around her. The voice was not human. It spoke in perfect English, but there was something mechanical about its tone, something that made the hair on the back of every listener's neck stand up. "People of Earth," it began, "your world has been selected for termination. The Galactic Purification Council has determined that humanity poses a threat to the stability of this galaxy." Sarah dropped her coffee mug. Around the world, billions of people stopped what they were doing and listened in growing horror as the voice continued. "Your species displays dangerous characteristics. You are violent, unpredictable, and refuse to submit to proper authority. You expand too quickly and consume resources without regard for other life forms. You have been observed for the past 50 Earth years, and our decision is final." The alien voice paused, and in that silence, the weight of the words settled on humanity like a physical blow. "You have 72 of your hours to prepare. Our fleet will arrive to cleanse your world of human life. Any resistance will be met with immediate vaporization of your planet. This is not a negotiation. This is an announcement of your scheduled extinction." The transmission ended as suddenly as it had begun, leaving behind a world in chaos. In New York, the United Nations building erupted into frantic activity. Emergency sessions were called. Military leaders were summoned. Scientists were gathered. But what could any of them do against an alien fleet capable of destroying entire planets? President Martinez stood in the Oval Office, staring at the phone in his hand. He had just finished speaking with the leaders of every major nation on Earth. The conversation had been brief and unanimous. There would be no surrender, no begging for mercy, no desperate attempts at negotiation. Humanity would face this threat as they had faced every other challenge in their history, together and fighting. "Madam President," said General Harrison, entering the room with a tablet in his hands, "we've got responses coming in from every military base, every space agency, and every research facility on the planet. The answer is the same everywhere, which is, they're asking what they can do to help. In Moscow, scientists who had been working on theoretical physics problems were now calculating weapons trajectories. In London, engineers who had designed bridges were sketching plans for space defenses. In Tokyo, programmers who had created video games were writing combat simulation software. Across the globe, humanity was transforming itself from a peaceful civilization into something the galaxy had never seen before. Dr. Chen found herself in an emergency meeting with the world's top physicists and astronomers. The question was simple. How do you fight an enemy that travels between stars? The answer was not simple at all, but as they worked through the night, ideas began to emerge. Crazy ideas, desperate ideas, ideas that might just work if they had enough time and enough people working together. "The problem," said Dr. Petrov from the European Space Agency, "is that we don't know anything about their technology, their ships, their weapons, or their numbers." "Then we prepare for everything," replied Dr. Kim from Seoul. "We assume they're more advanced than us, which they probably are. We assume they have weapons we've never imagined. We assume their ships are faster and stronger than anything we can build. So what's our advantage?" asked Dr. Chen. The room fell silent as they considered the question. What advantage could humanity possibly have against an advanced alien civilization that had been watching them for 50 years? Dr. Elizabeth Hawking, the youngest person in the room, raised her hand hesitantly. "Maybe our advantage is that they think they know us, but they don't. They've been watching us, but they've only seen us during peacetime. They've never seen what humans do when we're really threatened." Her words hung in the air like a challenge. Around the world, similar conversations were happening in every major city, every military base, every research facility. Humanity was waking up to a terrible truth. They were facing extinction. But they were also waking up to something else, a determination that ran deeper than fear, stronger than despair. In underground bunkers, technicians were pulling old missile systems out of retirement and upgrading them with whatever new technology they could manage. In orbital stations, astronauts were converting peaceful research equipment into weapons platforms. On the moon, the small lunar colony was already working around the clock to turn their mining lasers into defensive systems. The clock was ticking. 72 hours to prepare for a battle that would determine whether humanity survived or joined the countless other species that had been purified by the Galactic Council. But as reports continued to pour in from around the world, one thing became clear: humanity was not going to die quietly. In a small town in Iowa, a retired veteran named Jack Morrison sat in his garage cleaning his old rifle. His grandson, home from college, watched him with confusion. "Grandpa, that rifle isn't going to do anything against alien spaceships." Jack looked up and smiled grimly. "Maybe not, son. But they're going to learn something about humans that 50 years of watching couldn't teach them. We don't give up. We don't surrender. And we sure as hell don't go down without a fight." As the sun set on the first day after the announcement, humanity was already changing. They had 71 hours left, and they intended to use every single minute. Within 6 hours of the alien announcement, something unprecedented happened on Earth. Every border closed not to keep people out, but to coordinate defense. Every military stood down from their peacekeeping missions and turned toward space. Every scientist, engineer, programmer, and technician received the same message: report to your nearest coordination center immediately. Commander Lisa Rodriguez watched from the International Space Station as the planet below transformed before her eyes. Cities that had been glowing with normal light patterns were now blazing with activity. Every major population center was working around the clock, and from orbit, Earth looked like it was on fire with determination. ISS Control, this is Rodriguez. I'm seeing launch signatures from at least 15 different countries. What's the status down there? The voice that came back was crisp and professional, but she could hear the exhaustion underneath. Rodriguez, we've had more rocket launches in the past 6 hours than we normally see in 6 months. Every space-capable nation is pushing everything they have into orbit. We're building something up there. Building what? Humanity's first real space navy. Rodriguez looked out at the growing constellation of lights around Earth. Military satellites that had been mothballed for decades were being reactivated. Commercial satellites were being rapidly converted into weapons platforms. Even the old Hubble telescope was being fitted with targeting systems. It wasn't much against an interstellar fleet, but it was everything humanity had, down on Earth. Dr. Chen was no longer working at SETI. She was now part of something called the Global Defense Initiative, an organization that had been formed, staffed, and operational within 12 hours of the alien message. The speed of human adaptation was staggering even to the humans themselves. "The manufacturing reports are coming in," announced Dr. Hassan, formerly a climate scientist, now a logistics coordinator. "Detroit has converted 3 automobile factories to produce missile components. Germany has 5 weapons plants operating at maximum capacity. Japan is building targeting computers faster than we can install them. China has mobilized their entire manufacturing sector." "What about the other projects?" asked Dr. Chen. "Canberra reports that their particle accelerator will be weaponized within 40 hours. The Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland is being modified to generate focused energy beams. NASA and SpaceX are working together to launch kinetic projectile platforms. The Russians are preparing their entire nuclear arsenal for space deployment." General Martinez, who had taken command of the Unified Earth Defense, looked at the reports with amazement. "In 18 hours, we've built a defense network that would have taken us 20 years to create under normal circumstances." "How is this possible?" Dr. Hawking, who had become the chief science advisor, answered without looking up from her calculations. "Because we're not trying to do it perfectly anymore. We're not worried about environmental impact, budget constraints, political approval, or safety regulations. We're just trying to survive. When humans stop worrying about everything except survival, we move very fast." The truth of her words was evident everywhere. In Australia, mining companies had converted their equipment to dig underground bunkers in record time. In Canada, logging operations had switched to producing materials for fortifications. In Brazil, the rainforest preservation groups were working with the government to hide weapons platforms in the jungle canopy. But perhaps the most impressive transformation was happening in space itself. The crew of the ISS had been joined by emergency launches from 5 different countries. Astronauts who had trained for years to perform delicate scientific experiments were now installing weapons systems with tools they had never used before. Captain Yuki Tanaka, formerly a research pilot, was now commanding humanity's first improvised spacefighter. It wasn't much to look at, basically a cargo pod with engines and missiles attached, but it could move fast and hit hard. More importantly, there were 50 more just like it being assembled in orbit. Control, this is Tanaka. Test flight complete. This thing flies like a brick, but it flies. How many more are we building? Tanaka, current production schedule has us launching 500 combat vehicles within the next 40 hours. Every space station, orbital platform, and research facility is being converted to military use. 500? Where are we getting the crews? Volunteers. We've got more people volunteering for space combat duty than we have ships to put them in. Fighter pilots, test pilots, commercial pilots, even experienced video game players with flight simulation experience. If they can handle three-dimensional movement and combat, we're training them for space warfare. The alien announcement had done something unexpected. Instead of creating panic and despair, it had unified humanity in a way that nothing else ever had. Ancient enemies were sharing military technology. Rival corporations were collaborating on weapons development. Religious differences were set aside as every faith prayed for human survival. In the Vatican, the Pope issued a statement that was broadcast worldwide. Today we face not fellow humans, but those who would destroy all humanity. There is no greater cause than the defense of human life itself. May God guide our hands and strengthen our resolve. Similar messages came from Islamic leaders, Buddhist monks, Jewish rabbis, and spiritual leaders of every faith. The message was consistent. This was not just a military battle, but a fight for the right of humanity to exist. In the underground command center that had been hastily built beneath the Pentagon, President Martinez was receiving updates from around the globe. The reports were staggering in their scope and speed. Madam President, the European Union has completed integration of their defense systems. Asia-Pacific Alliance reports full military cooperation protocols in effect. The African Union has mobilized every available resource. South America is operating as a single unified command structure. What about our space defenses? Growing by the hour. We now have armed platforms at Lagrange points 1, 2, and 4. The moon base has been converted to a fortress. We've got weapon satellites in 17 different orbital patterns. It's not enough to stop an interstellar fleet, but it's more firepower concentrated in one place than has ever existed in human history. General Harrison, looking at the tactical displays, shook his head in wonder. 48 hours ago, we were arguing about trade agreements and border disputes. Today, we're the most unified military force in human history. Will it be enough? Asked the president. Against any human enemy? Absolutely. Against aliens who can travel between stars. We're about to find out. As the second day ended, humanity had accomplished something remarkable. They had taken a species that had never fought a unified war and turned it into a single, focused, desperate fighting force. The aliens had given them 72 hours to prepare for extinction. Humanity was using every minute to prepare for war instead. The alien fleet arrived exactly 72 hours after their announcement, appearing at the edge of the solar system like dark stars against the void. Every telescope on Earth and in orbit turned toward them, and what humanity saw made their breath catch in their throats. Dr. Chen stared at the readings on her screen in the Global Defense Command Center. My God, there are hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The alien ships were massive, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, approaching the inner solar system with the confidence of beings who had done this many times before. Their hulls were dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, making them difficult to track except for the gravitational distortions they created. Distance? Asked General Martinez. Approximately 4 billion kilometers in closing. At their current speed, they'll reach Earth orbit in 18 hours. President Martinez stood in the command center, watching the tactical display as red dots representing the alien fleet moved steadily toward the blue dot that was home. Around her, the most brilliant military minds from every nation on Earth worked frantically to coordinate humanity's response. What's our first contact protocol? She asked. There isn't one, ma'am, replied Dr. Hawking. They made it clear this isn't a negotiation. They're here to exterminate us. Then we respond accordingly. All units, this is command. Weapons free. Engage when ready. The words sent a chill through everyone who heard them. For the first time in human history, the entire species was at war. The first shots were fired by humanity's furthest defensive position, a hastily converted deep space probe that had been fitted with nuclear missiles. The probe, originally designed to study Jupiter, was now humanity's early warning system and first line of defense. Commander Sarah Walsh watched from the bridge of the converted space station Harmony as the probe launched its payload. Missiles away. Time to target 47 minutes. The nuclear warheads streaked through space toward the alien fleet, carrying with them the hopes and fears of 8 billion humans. When they struck, the flashes of light were visible even from Earth's orbit. But when the radiation cleared, the alien ships continued forward, apparently undamaged. No effect, reported Walsh grimly. Nuclear weapons appear ineffective against their shielding. But humanity had prepared for this possibility. The nuclear attack was not meant to destroy the fleet. It was meant to gather information. Hidden sensors in the warheads transmitted data about the alien ship's defensive capabilities, right up until the moment of detonation. Analysis complete, announced Dr. Patel from the Science Division. Their shields operate on a rotating frequency pattern. They absorb kinetic energy up to a certain threshold, then disperse it as heat. But there are gaps, brief windows where the frequency shifts. How brief? Asked General Martinez. 2.3 seconds every 47 seconds. It wasn't much, but it was something. And humanity had learned to work with whatever they had. The alien fleet continued its approach, passing Jupiter without slowing. As they moved deeper into the solar system, they began to spread out, taking positions that would allow them to surround Earth completely. It was a textbook orbital bombardment formation, one they had clearly used many times before. But as they approached Mars, they encountered something they had not expected. Captain Yuki Tanaka was leading the first wave of human spacefighters, hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Her ships were crude, hastily built, and armed with weapons that seemed laughably primitive compared to the alien technology. But they had one advantage the aliens had not anticipated. They were completely insane by galactic standards. All fighters, this is Tanaka. Enemy fleet approaching Mars orbit. Remember the plan. We're not trying to win this engagement. We're trying to learn how they fight and make them pay for every kilometer they advance. The human fighters powered up their engines and launched from their hiding places among the asteroids. 50 small ships against a fleet of hundreds of massive vessels. It should have been a massacre. And it was, but not the kind the aliens expected. The first human attack was unlike anything in galactic military doctrine. Instead of engaging in long-range combat or attempting to disable enemy ships, the human fighters flew directly at the alien vessels at maximum speed, firing everything they had and making no attempt to preserve their own lives. The aliens, accustomed to rational enemies who fought to survive, were caught off guard by the suicidal intensity of the human assault. 3 fighters managed to breach the alien defensive perimeter and collide directly with enemy ships, their nuclear self-destruct charges detonating against alien hulls. Scratched 2 enemy vessels, reported Tanaka, as her fighters spun away from an alien energy beam. Confirmed that ramming attacks are effective against their shield generators. The information was immediately transmitted to Earth, where it was analyzed and incorporated into the defense plan. Every piece of data was precious. Every lesson learned from the sacrifice of human pilots was passed on to the next wave of defenders. Captain Morrison, the former Marine from Iowa, was now commanding a weapons platform built into a converted asteroid. As the alien fleet approached Mars, he watched his displays with the calm focus of a lifetime soldier. Targeting solutions locked. All stations prepare for maximum rate of fire. When they reach the engagement zone, give them everything we've got. The asteroid belt had been transformed into humanity's primary defensive line. Hidden among the rocks were dozens of weapons platforms, missile launchers, and kinetic projectile systems. When the alien fleet entered the zone, space erupted in violence. Streams of projectiles flew at near light speed toward the alien ships. Missiles with sophisticated tracking systems pursued enemy vessels through complex evasion patterns. Energy beams from converted mining lasers struck out at targets millions of kilometers away. The aliens returned fire with weapons that defied human understanding of physics. Beams of pure energy that could vaporize asteroids. Projectiles that seemed to bend space itself. Guided weapons that could change direction instantaneously. But for every human platform they destroyed, the aliens learned something disturbing. These humans did not retreat. They did not attempt to preserve their forces for a better opportunity. They fought with a desperate intensity that was completely outside galactic experience. Command, this is Morrison. Platform 7 is gone. Platform 12 is taking heavy damage, but we've confirmed that their larger ships have a minimum effective range for their primary weapons. Sending data now. The information flowed back to Earth, where tactical computers processed every detail of the engagement. The aliens were more advanced, their weapons more powerful, their ships more sophisticated, but they were also predictable, following established patterns of galactic warfare. Humanity was not predictable. Humanity was desperate, creative, and utterly unwilling to accept defeat. As the alien fleet smashed through the asteroid belt defenses, they had destroyed most of the human platforms and fighters. But they had also learned that conquering Earth was not going to be the simple extermination mission they had expected. Admiral Zex, commanding the Galactic Purification Fleet, reviewed the combat reports with growing concern. In 50 years of purification missions, he had never encountered resistance like this. Most species, when faced with superior force, attempted to negotiate, surrender, or flee. These humans did none of those things. They attacked with equipment that should have been useless against galactic technology, and somehow made it work. They sacrificed themselves without hesitation to gather intelligence or inflict damage. They fought with a fury that bordered on madness. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "the humans have cost us 14 vessels and significant damage to 37 others. Our casualties are higher than in our last 5 purification missions combined." Noted. Continue advance to Earth. Deploy maximum firepower protocols. These humans are clearly more dangerous than initial observations indicated. As the alien fleet continued toward Earth, leaving behind the wreckage of humanity's first defensive line, both sides had learned important lessons. The aliens had learned that humans were far more dangerous than expected. Humanity had learned that they could hurt their enemies even with inferior technology. The real battle was still to come. While the alien fleet regrouped and advanced toward Earth, humanity was doing something that had never been done before in galactic history. They were learning and adapting in real time during an active invasion. Dr. Chen stood before a wall of screens in the Global Defense Command Center, each one showing different aspects of the battle analysis. "We've got their patterns now," she announced to the room. "Their tactical computers are incredibly advanced, but they're also predictable. They follow optimal mathematical solutions for every engagement." General Martinez looked up from the strategic displays. "Meaning what exactly?" "Meaning they fight like perfect computers. Every move calculated for maximum efficiency, minimum risk, optimal resource allocation. It's beautiful, actually, if you appreciate mathematical precision. And how does that help us?" Dr. Hawking stepped forward, her eyes bright with excitement. "Because humans don't think like computers. We make decisions that are completely irrational by their standards. We take risks that no optimal calculation would recommend. We do things that make no mathematical sense." The data from the asteroid belt engagement had revealed something crucial about their enemies. The Galactic Purification Council had been operating for thousands of years, and in all that time, they had never encountered a species that fought the way humans fought. Their tactical systems were designed to predict and counter rational responses to overwhelming force. Humanity was anything but rational. "New orders to all units," announced President Martinez. "Forget everything you know about military doctrine. Forget optimal tactics. Forget preserving forces for strategic advantage. From now on, we do the unexpected. Every time, in every engagement, we do what they can't predict because it doesn't make sense." The new strategy was implemented immediately. On the lunar base, Commander Kim was preparing to demonstrate just how unpredictable humans could be. "Luna base to all units. We're about to try something that's either brilliant or completely insane. Probably both." The lunar base had been converted into a massive railgun, capable of launching projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. But instead of firing conventional weapons at the approaching alien fleet, they were preparing to launch something unprecedented, a hollowed-out asteroid filled with every nuclear weapon humanity could spare, along with several thousand tons of radioactive waste, industrial chemicals, and biological samples from every disease known to humanity. "Sir," said Lieutenant Chen, no relation to Dr. Chen, "regulations clearly state that we cannot deploy biological weapons in space combat." Commander Kim smiled grimly. "There are no regulations anymore, Lieutenant. There's only survival. Besides, we're not deploying biological weapons. We're conducting an uncontrolled waste disposal incident that happens to coincide with an alien invasion. The asteroid was launched toward the alien fleet at 17% of light speed. By the time the aliens detected it, there was no time to calculate an optimal interception course. Their computers, analyzing the projectile, determined it was not a significant threat, just a large rock with some unusual chemical signatures. They were wrong. When the asteroid impacted the alien flagship, it didn't just explode. It contaminated the surrounding space with radiation, biological hazards, and chemical compounds that the alien decontamination systems had never been designed to handle. 3 enemy ships were forced to withdraw from the battle zone for emergency decontamination procedures. Luna Base to command. Direct hit on enemy flagship. Biological and chemical contamination confirmed. Enemy vessels retreating from engagement zone. The success of the unconventional attack was immediately broadcast to every human unit in the solar system. Within hours, similar waste disposal incidents were being prepared at installations across Earth and in orbit. But humanity's greatest breakthrough came from an unexpected source: a 16-year-old video game player named Marcus Rodriguez. Marcus had been recruited into the spacefighter program not because of any military experience, but because he held speed records in several space combat simulation games. Now sitting in the cockpit of a fighter that was essentially a missile with a human brain guiding it, he was about to change the course of the war. Command, this is Fighter 7. I've been analyzing the alien movement patterns, and I think they're operating under some kind of priority targeting system. Explain. 7. They always shoot at the biggest threat first, then work their way down. It's like they've got a threat assessment algorithm that ranks targets by destructive potential. But what if we game that system? Marcus's idea was simple and insane in equal measure. If the aliens always targeted the greatest threat first, then humanity could control who got shot at by manipulating their threat assessment readings. I'm going to make my fighter look like it's carrying antimatter warheads, Marcus announced. When they scan me, their computers will think I'm the most dangerous thing in the battle space. 7, that's suicide. They'll concentrate all their fire on you. Exactly. While they're shooting at me, everyone else can attack without being targeted. I can probably draw their fire for 30, maybe 40 seconds before they figure out I'm a decoy. It was the kind of plan that no military academy would teach, no computer would recommend, and no rational species would attempt, which made it perfect for humanity's new tactical doctrine. Marcus modified his fighter's energy signature to mimic an antimatter storage system, then flew directly toward the alien fleet. As predicted, every enemy ship in range immediately targeted him, recognizing him as the primary threat that needed to be eliminated. For 37 seconds, Marcus flew through a storm of alien fire, using every trick he had learned from years of gaming to stay alive just a few seconds longer. During those 37 seconds, 20 other human fighters attacked the alien fleet from multiple directions, striking targets that couldn't return fire because they were all focused on the antimatter threat. Marcus didn't survive the engagement, but his sacrifice allowed the human fighters to destroy 6 alien vessels and damage 12 others. More importantly, it proved that humanity could turn the aliens' superior technology against them. The tactic spread throughout the human fleet. Decoy ships mimicked antimatter signatures, fusion bombs, even planet-killer weapons. The aliens found themselves constantly targeting phantom threats while real attacks came from unexpected directions. In the depths of space, Chief Engineer Patel was implementing another uniquely human strategy aboard the converted cargo ship Determination. Her crew had spent the last 6 hours welding together something that violated every principle of safe engineering. A ship designed to explode. Engineering to bridge. The resonance cascade system is ready. When we get within range of that enemy dreadnought, this ship is going to shake itself apart and take anything nearby with it. Understood engineering. How big is the blast radius? Honestly, we have no idea. The physics models break down after the first 3 seconds of cascade failure, but it should be spectacular. The Determination flew toward the largest alien ship in the fleet, broadcasting surrender signals and making no aggressive moves. The aliens, following standard galactic protocol for accepting surrender, prepared to capture the vessel for interrogation. They had never encountered a species that used surrender as a weapon delivery system. When the cascade explosion erupted, it created a resonance effect that propagated through subspace, overwhelming the alien ship's defensive systems and causing catastrophic structural failure. The explosion was visible from Earth orbit, a brief new star that marked the death of humanity's largest enemy. Admiral Zex reviewed the tactical reports with growing alarm. In 12 hours of combat, his fleet had lost 37 vessels to an enemy that should have been eliminated within minutes. The humans were using tactics that no galactic species had ever attempted, weapons that violated conventional understanding of warfare, and strategies that bordered on madness. Sir, request permission to withdraw and call for reinforcements. These humans are unlike any enemy we have faced. Denied. We are the Galactic Purification Council. We do not retreat from primitive species, regardless of their tactical irregularities. All ships prepare for direct orbital assault. We end this now. The alien fleet moved toward Earth, but they were no longer the confident force that had arrived to conduct a routine extermination. They were battered, confused, and facing an enemy that refused to fight by any rules they understood. Humanity had found their edge, the willingness to do the impossible, the irrational and the completely insane. Against an enemy that relied on logic and calculation, humans had weaponized chaos itself. The alien fleet reached Earth orbit with half their original numbers, but Admiral Zex was determined to complete the purification mission. What remained of his force was still more than enough to sterilize the planet's surface. He had underestimated human ingenuity, but he would not make that mistake again. All ships maintain maximum distance from planetary defenses. Begin systematic bombardment of population centers. These humans have proven too dangerous to engage in close combat. The first bombardment began at dawn over the Pacific Ocean. Beams of energy that could boil oceans struck down from space, turning entire sections of the planet's surface into molten glass. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were erased in seconds. Millions of people died in the first hour of the orbital assault, but humanity did not break. From the Global Defense Command Center, now relocated to a bunker 3 kilometers underground, President Martinez watched the destruction on her screens with tears in her eyes and steel in her voice. "Status report," she demanded. "We've lost Sydney, Manila, and Jakarta," reported General Harrison. "They're targeting major population centers in systematic order. Current bombardment patterns suggest they'll work their way across every continent. Our remaining defenses? Orbital platforms are engaging, but they're maintaining distance. Our fighters can't get close enough to do significant damage. The lunar base is still operational, but they're targeting it now." The screen showed humanity's last space-based defenses being systematically destroyed. Fighter after fighter was vaporized by alien energy weapons. Orbital platforms that had been built in desperate haste were being reduced to debris. It looked like the end of human civilization. That's when Dr. Chen made an announcement that changed everything. "Madam President, I need to speak with you privately. It's about the Yellowstone Project." The Yellowstone Project was something so dangerous that only 5 people on Earth knew about it. Dr. Chen was one of them. In the 72 hours since the alien announcement, a team of the world's most brilliant and desperate scientists had been working on something that could either save humanity or destroy the planet. "The calculations are complete," Dr. Chen said quietly. "We can do it. We can crack the planetary crust and create a directed explosion that will reach orbital altitude. It will destroy most of North America and cause global environmental catastrophe, but it will also take out any alien ships in low Earth orbit." President Martinez stared at her. "You're talking about intentionally triggering the Yellowstone supervolcano, not triggering it, weaponizing it. We've been building a network of shaped charges throughout the caldera. If we detonate them in sequence, we can direct the explosion upward instead of outward. It's planetary-scale kamikaze, but it might work. And the cost? Everyone in North America dies. Probably most of Europe and Asia too, from the environmental effects. But some humans survive, and the alien fleet in orbit is destroyed. It was a choice no species should ever have to make. The certain death of half their population in exchange for the possibility of survival for the other half. But humanity had already shown they were willing to make choices that no rational species would consider. President Martinez looked at the destruction reports streaming in from around the globe. The aliens were methodically exterminating human civilization. In 12 hours, there would be no one left to save anyway. Do it. The order went out through channels so secure that most of the human military didn't know what was happening. In Yellowstone National Park, automated systems began the final countdown to the most desperate gamble in human history. But while the Yellowstone Project prepared for activation, Humanity's surviving defenders were not giving up. In orbit around Earth, Captain Walsh was leading the last squadron of functional space fighters in what everyone knew was a suicide mission. All fighters, this is Walsh. We've got one more trick to try. We're going to demonstrate something the aliens haven't seen yet. Human stubbornness. Her plan was simple and insane. The 15 remaining fighters would link their engines together using emergency tow cables, creating a single massive acceleration system. Then they would fly directly at the alien command ship at maximum possible speed, using their combined mass and velocity as a kinetic weapon. Command, this is Walsh. Beginning final approach. Tell our families we made it count. The linked fighters accelerated toward the alien flagship like a human-guided missile. The aliens, detecting the approach, fired everything they had at the incoming threat. One by one, the fighters were destroyed, but the survivors maintained course and speed. When Captain Walsh's fighter, the last one remaining, struck the alien command ship, the impact was equivalent to a small nuclear explosion. The flagship's shields failed, its hull cracked, and its command systems went offline. For the first time since arriving at Earth, the alien fleet was operating without central coordination. On the surface, Commander Kim at the lunar base took advantage of the confusion to launch humanity's final conventional attack. The base's railgun fired a stream of projectiles at maximum rate, emptying their entire ammunition supply in one massive barrage. Luna base to all units. We're going dark. Weapons depleted, life support failing. It's been an honor serving with you all. The lunar base was destroyed 3 minutes later, but their final barrage had damaged 6 more alien ships and bought precious time for the Yellowstone project. Underground, the countdown continued. Dr. Chen watched the seismic readings as the shaped charges prepared to detonate. Around the world, other scientists were implementing equally desperate measures. In Russia, nuclear submarines were surfacing to fire their entire missile payload at any alien ship they could reach. In China, the military was attempting to use their space elevator as a giant slingshot. In Europe, scientists were overloading the Large Hadron Collider in an attempt to create an artificial black hole. Every plan was desperate. Every strategy was potentially suicidal. Every action was taken with the knowledge that it might be humanity's last. Admiral Zex, aboard his damaged flagship, watched the human response with something approaching admiration. No species in galactic history had fought with such desperate creativity. Even facing certain extinction, these humans continued to devise new ways to inflict damage on their enemies. Sir, the humans have launched nuclear weapons from underwater platforms. They appear to be targeting our orbital bombardment ships. Impossible. Their rockets cannot reach our altitude. Sir, they're not using conventional rockets. They appear to be using their missiles as the first stage of a larger delivery system. The warheads are separating and continuing upward using some kind of improvised propulsion. The human nuclear attack was unlike anything in galactic military doctrine. Instead of trying to hit alien ships directly, the warheads were designed to explode in sequence, creating a chain reaction that pushed subsequent explosions higher into orbit. It was inefficient, wasteful, and according to any rational analysis, completely pointless. It was also effective enough to damage 3 alien ships and force them to retreat to higher orbit. Sir, request permission to withdraw to a safe distance and complete orbital bombardment from extended range. Admiral Zex considered the request. His fleet had taken unacceptable casualties, his command ship was damaged, and the humans showed no signs of surrender despite facing impossible odds. The rational choice was to withdraw and complete the mission safely, but the Galactic Purification Council did not retreat from primitive species, no matter how irrationally they fought. Negative. All ships move to close orbit. We end this now, regardless of cost. It was exactly what humanity had been waiting for, as the alien fleet moved closer to Earth to ensure their bombardment was effective. They entered the effective range of the Yellowstone weapon. Deep underground, Dr. Chen's finger hovered over the activation switch. Around the world, 8 billion humans held their breath, knowing that their next breath might be their last. Yellowstone control to command. All systems ready. Detonation in 10 seconds. President Martinez closed her eyes and whispered a prayer for a species that had never learned to surrender. God help us all. Execute Yellowstone. The Yellowstone supervolcano had been sleeping for over 640,000 years. When humanity woke it up, They did so with the force of human desperation and scientific precision working together. The shaped charges detonated in a sequence calculated to direct the massive explosion upward rather than outward, instead of the natural sideways eruption that would have covered half of North America in ash. The explosion was focused into a column of superheated rock, gas, and debris that shot into space like the largest cannon ever fired. Dr. Chen watched the seismic readings spike beyond anything ever recorded. Detonation successful. Volcanic column rising past atmospheric limits. Impact with orbital targets in 17 seconds. The column of molten rock and superheated gas struck the alien fleet like the fist of an angry planet. Ships that had survived humanity's most advanced weapons were torn apart by simple physics, mass, velocity, and temperature beyond their engineering tolerances. Admiral Zex felt his command ship shudder as debris from the volcanic explosion struck their hull. Damage report. Sir, we're being hit by planetary matter moving at orbital velocity. Our shields are failing under the sheer volume of impact. This is impossible. No species weaponizes geological events. The impossible was happening anyway. 12 alien ships were destroyed outright by the volcanic column. 8 more were severely damaged by the debris field that followed. The remainder of the fleet was forced to retreat to higher orbit to avoid the continuing rain of planetary matter. But the cost to humanity was exactly what Dr. Chen had predicted. The northwestern United States disappeared under a cloud of ash and fire. The environmental effects began immediately as the atmosphere filled with volcanic debris. The planet would be an artificial winter for years. Yet somehow, incredibly, it had worked. The alien fleet had been reduced to fewer than 30 ships, and they were no longer in position to conduct effective orbital bombardment. In the Global Defense Command Center, now running on emergency power and filtered air, President Martinez surveyed the damage reports with grim satisfaction. Status of remaining alien forces: 18 ships confirmed destroyed, 11 severely damaged, approximately 29 still combat effective. But they've withdrawn to high orbit, beyond effective bombardment range. Our remaining defenses? Minimal. We have maybe 6 functional orbital platforms, no operational fighters, and the lunar base is gone. But ma'am, we're getting reports from around the globe. The aliens aren't the only ones who've been watching this battle. General Harrison handed her a communication intercept that changed everything. This is a message we picked up being broadcast from the alien fleet. It's not directed at us, it's being sent to the rest of the galaxy. The translation was simple and devastating to the alien cause. Purification Fleet Zeta 9 to Galactic Council. Mission parameters exceeded. Human resistance beyond acceptable losses. Species exhibits unprecedented tactical adaptation and suicidal determination. Recommend immediate reclassification to dangerous do not engage status. Dr. Hawking looked up from her analysis station with amazement. They're asking for permission to retreat. In the entire history of the Galactic Purification Council, no species has ever forced them to request withdrawal. But the response from the Galactic Council was swift and uncompromising. Request denied. Complete purification mission. Species cannot be allowed to survive given demonstrated capabilities. Admiral Zex received the order with something approaching despair. His fleet was battered, his crews were demoralized, and the humans had demonstrated that they would literally destroy their own planet rather than surrender. But orders were orders. All ships prepare for final assault. We drop kinetic bombardment systems from maximum range. No ships are to approach within 10,000 kilometers of the planet. The aliens were preparing to end the battle by simply dropping massive projectiles from space, destroying Earth through pure kinetic energy, rather than risking close engagement with the insane humans. It was safe, effective, and would complete their mission. They had forgotten that humans were still listening to their communications. We've got maybe 2 hours before they begin kinetic bombardment, announced Dr. Chen. At that range, there's nothing we can do to stop them. That's when the most unexpected voice in the command center spoke up. It was a 12-year-old girl named Emma Rodriguez, Marcus's younger sister, who had been brought to the command center because there was nowhere else safe for her to go. "Excuse me," she said quietly, "but why don't we just ask the other aliens for help?" The adults stared at her. "What other aliens, sweetie?" "The ones who've been watching the battle. My brother was monitoring extragalactic communications before he died. There are lots of other aliens out there who've been watching this fight. Some of them don't like the Galactic Council very much." In all the chaos of battle, humanity had forgotten that they were putting on a show for the entire galaxy. Every species with interstellar communication had been watching Earth's desperate defense. And Emma was right. Not everyone approved of the Galactic Purification Council's methods. Dr. Chen quickly accessed the communication archives that Marcus had been monitoring. What she found changed everything. My God, there are dozens of species that have been broadcasting support for humanity. Some of them are offering aid. What kind of aid? Military aid. The message came from a species called the Corvani Collective, whose own homeworld had been threatened by the Galactic Council 50 years earlier. Unlike humanity, they had surrendered rather than fight. They had regretted that decision ever since. To the warriors of Earth, your courage has inspired the galaxy. We offer what assistance we can provide. Corvani fleet en route to your system. Estimated arrival in 4 hours. Similar messages were pouring in from across the galaxy. The Andromedan Free States, the Tau Ceti Republic, the Outer Rim Alliance. Species that had been oppressed, threatened, or simply disgusted by the Galactic Council's reign of terror were finally seeing an example of successful resistance. Admiral Zex was monitoring the same communications, and what he saw filled him with dread. Sir, we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching this system. At least 40 ships from various species. They appear to be moving to assist the humans. For the first time in galactic history, the Purification Council was facing not just one stubborn species, but an alliance of enemies united by humanity's example of defiance. Sir, request immediate reinforcements. We're facing a general uprising. The response from the Galactic Council was a long silence, then a message that no admiral in their fleet had ever received. Fleet Zeta 9, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. Return to Council space for debriefing. Admiral Zex stared at the order in disbelief. They were retreating. The Galactic Purification Council, which had dominated the galaxy for thousands of years, was withdrawing from a battle with a primitive species that had achieved spaceflight less than a century ago. Sir, what are your orders? Admiral Zex looked at the tactical display showing the approaching alien fleets, the devastated but still defiant planet below, and the impossible species that had changed everything by refusing to accept the impossible. All ships, begin withdrawal to hyperspace jump points. Mission terminated. As the alien fleet retreated, leaving Earth's orbit for the first time in days, something unprecedented happened across the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear of the Galactic Council began broadcasting messages of congratulation to the small blue planet that had shown them all that resistance was possible. Humanity had not just survived their first contact with galactic civilization, they had accidentally started the first galactic revolution in recorded history. On Earth, in the ash-covered ruins of the Global Defense Command Center, President Martinez listened to the alien withdrawal with tears streaming down her face. They had done it. Against impossible odds, using impossible tactics, with impossible determination, humanity had won their right to exist. Ma'am, said General Harrison quietly, we're receiving a message from the Corvani fleet. They're asking permission to enter our system to provide humanitarian aid. Permission granted. And General? Yes, ma'am. Send a message to all approaching fleets. Tell them that Earth welcomes all beings who come in peace. It's time humanity met its neighbors properly. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy was a very different place. The Galactic Purification Council, which had ruled through fear for millennia, found themselves facing rebellions on 17 different worlds. Species that had submitted to council authority for generations were suddenly remembering what it meant to fight for their freedom. Ambassador Chen, formerly Dr. Chen, stood on the observation deck of the new Earth orbital station, looking out at a sight that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. Ships from dozens of different species hung in orbit around Earth, part of what was now being called the Freedom Alliance. Status report, Ambassador, said Captain Walsh, who had survived her suicide mission through a combination of luck, skill, and the stubborn human refusal to die when expected. The Corvani have completed reconstruction of the European agricultural zones. The Andromedan medical teams report that radiation levels in the former combat zones are back to acceptable levels, and the Tau Ceti engineers have finished the first phase of atmospheric cleanup from the Yellowstone event. It had taken 6 months, but Earth was healing. More than that, it was thriving. The alien technology shared by humanity's new allies had advanced human civilization by centuries almost overnight. Cities were being rebuilt with materials that could withstand planetary bombardment. Ships were being constructed that could cross the galaxy in weeks rather than centuries, but the most significant change wasn't technological. It was political. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Morrison, grandson of the veteran who had cleaned his rifle. On that first day, we were receiving another petition for membership in the Alliance. This time it's from the Centauri Federation. The Freedom Alliance had grown from a desperate wartime coalition into the galaxy's fastest-growing political movement. What had started as a few species coming to Earth's aid had become a galactic revolution. Over 60 species had now joined the Alliance, and more were applying every week. President Martinez, now serving as the first human representative to the Galactic Assembly, reviewed the membership applications with amazement. "A year ago, we didn't even know there was a galaxy to join. Now we're helping to reorganize it." The transformation hadn't been without challenges. The Galactic Council still controlled significant territory and military assets. They had declared the Freedom Alliance a terrorist organization and were actively working to prevent other species from joining. What had begun as humanity's fight for survival had become a galaxy-wide civil war. But it was a war that the Council was losing. "Intelligence report from the Outer Rim," announced Commander Kim, now serving as Earth's military liaison to the Alliance fleet. 3 more Council client species have declared independence this month. The Council's military is spread too thin to maintain control over their territory. The reason was simple. Humanity had shown the galaxy that the Council could be beaten. More than that, they had shown that fighting back was not only possible but successful. Species that had lived under Council oppression for centuries were finally willing to risk everything for freedom. Dr. Hawking, now serving as Earth's chief science advisor to the Alliance, had been studying the broader implications of humanity's impact on galactic civilization. Her report was fascinating and troubling in equal measure. The Council's power was based on the universal belief that resistance was futile, she explained to the assembled Alliance leadership. Every species they encountered either surrendered immediately or was completely destroyed. They never faced prolonged resistance because no one believed such resistance was possible. "And now?" asked Ambassador Chen. "Now every species in the galaxy knows that the Council can be hurt, that their ships can be destroyed, that their fleets can be defeated. The psychological foundation of their empire has been shattered." It was true. Across the galaxy, the Council was facing challenges they had never encountered before. Species were fighting back using tactics learned from humanity's example. Some were copying human strategies directly: suicide attacks, unconventional weapons, the deliberate use of inferior technology to confuse advanced targeting systems. Others were developing their own unique approaches to resistance, inspired by humanity's refusal to accept defeat. The Corvani had weaponized their natural ability to phase between dimensions, making their ships impossible to target effectively. The Andromedans had learned to use their advanced biotechnology to create living weapons that adapted during combat. The Tau Ceti Republic had developed quantum warfare techniques that could disable Council ships without destroying them, but perhaps the most significant development was happening on Earth itself. Emma Rodriguez, now 13 years old, stood in the newly constructed Human Military Academy, addressing a class of students from 12 different species. She had become something of a celebrity across the galaxy. The child who had suggested asking other aliens for help during humanity's darkest hour. "The most important thing to remember about humans," she told her mixed-species audience, "is that we don't know when to quit. My brother Marcus died fighting the Council fleet, but he never once considered surrendering. None of us did." The students, representing species that had spent generations under Council rule, listened with fascination. Many of them had come to Earth specifically to learn from humanity, to understand how a primitive species had accomplished what advanced civilizations had thought impossible. "But teacher," asked a young Corvani, "what if the enemy is too strong? What if resistance truly is hopeless?" Emma smiled, and in that smile was the essence of human stubbornness that had changed the galaxy. "There's no such thing as hopeless. There's only harder, and humans are really good at doing hard things." The academy had become more than just a military school. It was a symbol of the new galaxy that was emerging from humanity's example. Species that had never worked together were learning to fight together, to think together, to dream of a future free from the Council's oppression. Admiral Zex, former commander of the Council's purification fleet, sat in a detention facility on a neutral world, awaiting trial for war crimes. His career was over, his fleet disbanded, his empire crumbling, but as he watched news broadcast from across the galaxy, he found himself feeling something unexpected: respect. The humans had done something no species in galactic history had accomplished. They had faced certain extinction and not only survived, but inspired others to resist oppression. They had turned a routine purification mission into the beginning of the end for the Council's reign of terror. "Guard," he called to his human jailer, a former fighter pilot named Torres. "I have a question." "What is it, Admiral?" "Your species knew you could not win. You knew that fighting would mean death for most of your population. Why did you not surrender and negotiate for better terms?" Torres considered the question for a moment, then answered with the kind of simple honesty that had defined humanity's response to the crisis. "Because surrendering to bullies just encourages them to bully someone else. We figured if we had to die anyway, we might as well make it expensive for you. And now? Now the galaxy is free or getting there. Turns out dying for something worthwhile is a lot better than living on your knees." Admiral Zex nodded slowly. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered a species that chose death over submission. Now he understood why that choice had been so powerful, and why the Galactic Council was doomed. The future was still uncertain. The Council still controlled vast territories and commanded powerful fleets. The war for galactic freedom would likely continue for years, possibly decades, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had shown the galaxy that freedom was worth fighting for, that resistance was possible, and that sometimes the right choice was the hard choice. Species across the galaxy had learned that lesson, and were teaching it to others. As Ambassador Chen looked out at the ships in Earth's orbit, representing dozens of species united in their determination to be free, she reflected on how much had changed since that terrifying morning when the aliens first announced humanity's extinction. "Captain Walsh," she said, "do you ever regret that we didn't try to negotiate?" Walsh, scarred from her battles but still ready to fight if needed, smiled. "Ma'am, we did negotiate. We negotiated from a position of strength. We told the galaxy that humans don't surrender, that freedom isn't negotiable, and that anyone who wants to oppress others will have to go through us first." And the galaxy listened. Yes, ma'am, the galaxy listened. In the end, humanity had faced the ultimate test and passed it in a way that changed everything. They had been threatened with extinction, and responded without hesitation. Not with surrender, not with desperation, but with the kind of stubborn, creative, impossible determination that defined their species. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had intended.